Come on in. This is Chevy Cool Lady. We're talking about the Mica Francis case. So come on in. We're sharing notes. As y'all know, I have been reporting on this matter from the beginning. And we're not going to shut up until we see justice for Mica. So come on in, everybody. Grab you a snack. And we're going to talk about the notes that I've been keeping and different things that have come up in connection with both the case and related matters of domestic violence, abuse. My heart goes out to every survivor. I am also a survivor of domestic abuse, and I'm here for you, honey. I'm here for you. Somebody has to speak up because those who have been uh, under the narcissistic hands of abuse have had their voices taken from them. So Chevy Cool Lady is a voice for the voiceless. We talk about true crime, current events, Christian issues. We talk about salvation, and we talk about things that hold Christians down from living their purpose in Christ. Okay, so today we're going to go over some. Let me wipe off my little camera because it looks a little bit. Excuse me for that, guys. I'm so sorry for all that, but it looked a little smudgy or something. I'm using my phone because my computer broke, and maybe y'all could like, subscribe, share, or help support this ministry and channel, and I get some more equipment to fill in that gap. One way or another, we're going to get the message out. We're talking about Mica Francis, so come on in today, please. Please let me know where you're watching from in the comments also. Okay, so just a brief recap. I know y'all have heard every bit of this case, but perhaps I have a different angle. Maybe I have one clue that you did not hear. You know, we all have little pieces of the puzzle, and we're all working together to see justice for Mica. So Mica Miller uh, basically was her married name, married to John Paul Miller, the infamous defamed pastor here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. This has been a story of corruption to levels that I have never seen before in this type of church setting, a local church setting. I went to Solid Rock on a visitation, put it that way. They were having a community um, community type of fair, and I'm helping raise my 10-year-old grandson. We saw the church there with animals. Hi, Cole Mark. Nice to have you in. Come on in. So we're talking about Mica Francis. I visited that church one time, and y'all might have heard the story, but I stopped there with my neighbors and our grandkids, and my neighbor and her daughter went running ahead, and I was kind of waiting for my grandson. We walked in the building. Um, Immediately, my grandson threw up. He had been fine all day. Immediately, he threw up. I felt very sick and nauseated. Got that cleaned up. We were going through to the backyard, or the whatever, the area where they had some animals and that type of thing for the kids. Some I guess snacks and stuff. I actually saw Mica there dressed in her Wonder Woman outfit that we've seen, looking gorgeous. But she also looked really annoyed. Now that I know the story, it's fully justifiable. Who knows the hell she was going through that day. And uh, I might have seen John Paul in his Spider Man outfit creeping around like the creepy is in the background somewhere. I didn't speak to either one of them. Like I said, I was visiting. My grandson had displayed an overwhelming sense of sickness. I felt this sense of dread. So I wasn't, I was on a grandma alert, put it that way. And the kids were then playing. He felt better, and they were outside playing and petting the animals and stuff like that they had. Um, and my neighbor said, "Oh, you want to come with me Sunday? Come here Sunday?" And I was like, "No." And then I felt bad for saying no. I said, "They're just something's just not sitting right with me here." Within weeks, the whole story, what happened with Micah, developed. And, I'm really glad that the Lord spared me from getting involved and giving my heart to a place that was abusive. He steered me around it. But my heart goes out to the people who did suffer through, who were members of Solid Rock, who were a community that was betrayed by their elders and pastors. And I have to put a warning out for people who are involved in churches who are owned by the pastor, which was this case. He had no accountability. He was accountable to his dad, who okay, then y'all know that story, right? So let's not waste any more time. That was my one experience going to Solid Rock Church, and it wasn't a good one, despite all the bells and whistles and everything else. So, come on in, Danielle. Good to have you, Prismatic. I welcome in, guys. I love you. Please remember to hit the like button. That would help me out so much. I really appreciate it. Okay, so anyway, just kind of a brief cap. Mike had met John Paul Miller, when she was about 14. Her family moved to the area. The kids began attending the youth services. I believe he was youth pastor, married. He had at least one child, who, by the way, was born out of wedlock. Nothing against that. I'm just saying, for a Christian minister who was raised by a Christian minister in a I was a Christian cathedral, Bible college atmosphere, whatever he was calling it. His ministry, I'm talking about Wayne Miller's ministry, has changed names more times than most people change their socks. Every time there's a scandal or something, he just flips it and keeps the money rolling in, just changes the name. He's crafty that way. And his son's crafty too, just since all the hoopla ever since Micah's um, untimely death. We've seen in the last year him associated with 5 ministries, just changing the name, keeping that same evil, unrepentant spirit. It's a shame, and we're going to keep talking about it until we see justice for Micah. So, people of Myrtle Beach, be aware of this character, John Paul Miller, and his bunch of Goonies, because I haven't seen that they're up to any good at all in the community, and they've hurt a lot of people. And I'm going to spread the word. Yeah, I'd like to see them completely closed down, and I'd like to see all these people that had anything to do with the Micah's abuse. I'd like to see them all put away, all held accountable. I know that my God will hold them all accountable for every idle word, just like he will me. But I'd really love to see it happen very soon and get them off the streets and out of the community, and, let them face what's coming to them, you know? All right. So we'll backpack up, or like I said, she met him when she was a young teenager. She even has allegedly made statements of being groomed for the position at 18. John Paul Miller officiated over her wedding with his best friend. I believe his name's Mark. And they were married in constant fellowship with John Paul Miller, and his wife at that time was Allison. They went on and had, I believe, 4 kids together. Meanwhile, at some particular point, it said that Mike was completely immersed, put it that way, in John Paul's life. She was working for the church. She was, leading worship. I think she was in charge of either the women's group or youth. She was designing T-shirts and other graphic arts. Incredibly talented singer. She actually had affiliation, I'm just going to say, with Dare to Care. It was named as her ministry or missionary project. I believe just recently Agatha May came out and said that actually or it might have been Robbie Harvey, said that she actually had wanted to have a mission in Pakistan. But we all know that Wayne Miller has very bad connections with Pakistan and the people because of the alleged abuse that he inflicted on the young men and boys in that area. It's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. I believe that's probably the reason that then she was steered to uh, begin this or have a it's confusing now because I had been under the impression right until last week that she actually started that missionary in with Pastor Jamba in Kenya, but it seems that it may have been already in progress. I think I did hear it on Robbie Harvey, but it could have been Agatha May. I can't quite remember which one. And I think that particular information was probably reliable, but either way, she was doing everything for everybody, and herself in her marriage and in her ministry was being thwarted from the purpose of God by the oppression and oppressive yoke and the chains of iniquity that her husband was casting on her, and allegedly involving her by her own words in you know all kinds of depravity. But what happened was he married her to his best friend, and then had this control pretty much over both of them. He worked. I think he was also worship leader, played the guitar or something, and he would send him off on various errands, knowing then that Mike was alone with him, and began an affair, which was soon found out. It caused both Micah to have a divorce, as well as John Paul was divorced by Alice. There were a lot of problems that came from the divorce with between John Paul and Allison. From what I could see, he acted like a crazy maniac stalker. She moved in a house. He rented a house right around the circle so he could actually, if he hid behind a tree, remember how many times trees were mentioned in the early part of this, he could actually see her house. There was even police report where she said, he's shining lasers in the house and just being a distractive, annoying, hi, I'm here, pay attention to me kind of person. Just to me, that's stalkerish. What do y'all think? Stalker? Then we saw him drugged up, doped out, pulled up in his truck, basically fell out. We didn't see that part. I would love to, but here he is on the ground crying like a baby. That was the I'm gonna go see Jesus little thing that he did that was mocked by one and mocked by all. Just a horrible example of a human being. And he was driving like that, So he showed up in his own front yard where neighbors then videoed it. And I've always said, his neighbor must have really thought he was a piece of work to hold on to that video after all these years. Anyway, they got divorced and life went on. I guess about a year or so later, he married Micah. It was a big to do. There's you can check out. I have even their engagement video on my channel. Um, Micah was a beautiful woman, and she was young. She wanted to have fun, and she wanted things to be perfect. You can tell by her wedding photos and everything that he was sure to always have in the background when he did interviews and TikToks later on. By the way, presenting such a farce and a false narrative, pretending like they were actually happy when every piece of documentation and anyone who knew her knew they were troubled, to say the least. Well, after that, they got engaged, got married in the same church that he had married her to his best friend in, had an affair with her in the church, was caught in the act in the church, apparently by the Jane Does and possible John Does that come forward, also raped, molested, and abused many other young people, minors, in fact. To, justice for the John Does and Jane Does and anybody who was hurt by this ministry. It's just a shame. It is a shame, and I hope that it is never replicated. That's why I'm speaking out. Justice for Micah, people. Light this chat up with purple hearts. Justice for Micah. All right, so their marriage was pretty much a sham. It seemed like he did what narcissists love to do, which was control Micah in every aspect, from the way she dressed to what she ate to her so-called needed medicine. He didn't allow her to have friends. Typical handbook, textbook narcissistic behavior. I remember hearing that he actually told her to dress down so as not to detract from him. People. Need I say more? All right, so we saw that, okay, basically, there was a lot of problems. There was a lot of alleged abuse. This is listed in what I hope will soon become Micah's Law. It's Micah's list right now, comprised by her attorney, Regina Ward, and supported by her family and friends and the whole Micah for Justice movement, to bring accountability to people who are abusing other people in domestic violence situations, to bring information and accountability to the officers involved so they'll recognize what's going on, hopefully, because that's part of the problem, is the concealment and the mind control aspect that a survivor has to endure just to live, just to stay alive. We saw that part of JP's abuse was this mental control. We know that JP was diagnosed schizophrenic. I don't know what else, was on medication, according to Micah's sister, for 20 years. Now, Mike gets with him, never had any kind of, mental health issues or was treated in any way. We're still not sure if she was ever really even diagnosed with anything, although she was hospitalized a couple times involuntarily. Now, we know on October 8th of 2023, Micah and JP actually filed for divorce at that time, but reunited. The story, I believe, is that she went to Kansas and just began to establish a life out there with friends, a new church, whatever. And abruptly, her friends received texts and said something more or less like, "Praise the Lord, my husband is allowing me to come back home. We're reunited." Or some crazy text that didn't even sound like her, according to her friends. It left her family and friends stunned. What's going on? I still don't know what happened in that town. I did hear a report that JP was actually seen there. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. If he showed up stalking her, could he lure her away? Of course. Of course. That's what they love to do. So whether that happened or not, that I don't know. So if y'all know or have a thought, put that in the comments, please. I'd love to know more about that. I did see an interview with the friend she was staying with or knew out there and whatnot. And it seemed like a big mystery to me what happened to bring her back. So anyway, after that, they did try to reconcile, which brings us to February 8th of 2024. Mica was involuntarily hospitalized for 48 hours by the Myrtle Beach Police Department. It is said that she was actually supposed to meet Pastor Randolph at Walmart to receive medication that she had left at the house when she was separated. They separated again. So this was during the second separation. Um, she, John Paul Miller, as you know, was constantly trying to force lithium on this girl. And I think she was under the impression, and this is alleged, that she was going to meet him and pick up the medication, but instead was greeted with Myrtle Beach police and was taken to the hospital involuntarily, which left her in a state, I'm sure, of bewilderment and betrayal on so many sides. While she was in the hospital, John Paul went up there. That's when he somehow talked the nurse or whoever into releasing her property that belonged to her, her laptop, her phone, her car, and he claimed was marital property, which according to her was not. It was hers. And that's a whole nother thing, because technically they were married. So I don't know for sure what the state of South Carolina claims is marital property. So whatever, it was in her name according to her, and he took it. Later on, the principal of that Hokie school, Faith First, was seen driving it. Some people have no shame at all. But anyway, he apparently, allegedly, made a bunch of phone calls and texts from her phone when he had it in her possession. She was mortified because apparently there were 2 laptops and her phone that perhaps had what she called naked pictures, private pictures, her own stuff that she didn't want publicized. She said there were people at the house that she didn't authorize to be there. It was still her property too. Or maybe actually in December he had transferred this to the church, so now it's a church property, their marital home. Crazy. But she felt that it was hers and called the police and asked to help. She said, please, at least just retrieve these things for me, because his sister's over there and I don't trust her either. His son Logan, I guess, had hit on her in the house. He's there with this property. He's married and also allegedly an abuser from the police reports that we've seen. Oh yeah, there's a whole cast of characters involved in this, and none of them on the Miller side seem any good at all. I haven't heard about his mother, Susan, but just to be, whatever. I haven't heard anything about her, but she's still supporting him. But it is her son, so there's that. Anyway, so all this stuff was so hurtful to Micah. She just wanted to go on with her life at this point in time, and he wasn't letting her. He was following her around and whatnot. So February 10th, 2024, Micah's discharged from the hospital and her car goes missing. after JP reportedly picked up her purse and keys while she was hospitalized, February 21st, 2024. Mica reports that JP fraudulently initiated her hospitalization and stole her car. She alleges that JP groomed her while she worked for him at Solid Rock. No charges are filed due to the car being considered marital property. It makes me so mad. Come on, Myrtle Beach police. Do better for people than that, man. And any man who would do that, even going through a divorce, it just shows you he had no need. He has like 18 cars or something stupid like that. It's not like he needed the car. He wanted to control her. It's a controlling, narcissistic abuser, in my opinion. Additionally, on March 11th, 2024, a month and 2 weeks before she's found deceased in the Lumber River, Mica's tire is slashed with a tire deflation device. I believe it happened twice. These metal things, like triangle things that slash through the tires, but you can buy them at Amazon. I wonder if the FBI checked his Amazon to see if he bought them. I would love if they found the receipts from those devices and charged him with attempted murder just on those things. Let's pile up the charges on him, FBI. Come on, guys. Do something, man. Anyway, yeah. So that happened. There's pictures of those things. She reports also that a tracking device is found on her car. He admitted to that. He said he had hired a PI because he was worried because around Christmas she just goes cuckoo and buys everybody cars and houses and or whatever, random things. Spends all his money. Remember that picture where she had tape over her mouth and he had dollar signs in his eyes, and he was all about the Benjamins and not at all about the Lord. Mica seeks a restraining order, literally fearing for her life. Additionally, JP's okay, I skipped that little part here. Hold on. So we followed this story from the beginning. We've seen the fateful day of April 27th, where Mica is seen in the Ring camera at the apartment she's staying at with a woman from church. In fact, a woman who was kicked out of Solid Rock for supporting John Paul. He called her out, from what I understand, in the middle of a service and basically told her to get out. Sad but true. I believe it's true. So anyway, we saw Mike come in. We saw her first dressed, whether she'd been working out. I don't know. I never have found out where she was coming back from. The first one that I saw, anyway, was her coming back. Did anybody see her leaving that first time? She comes back. She has a drink. She has a purse. She has a lock on her purse. She comes in. She next thing you see, we see her in her work clothes, long sleeve shirt, t-shirt over top, or yeah, and black pants, whatever. And we see her now listening to the sermon that John Paul brought up in the News Nation. I can't remember what exactly it was called. It was something like, I love God, but I want to blank myself, or something like that. Something along those lines. But and he asked her, oh no, that was the book she was reading. The sermon was something like, you know, something about starting a new beginning, but I can't remember what it was. Anyway, it just showed that, you know, she had plans. She was going to work. She apparently had a hairdresser or something, nail salon appointment on the weekend. She was meeting somebody for church the next day. She had plans. She had plans. Something happened when she left. She decided she needed to go get a weapon, and she stopped at none other than Dick's pawn shop here in Conway. I went there the other day. I was, because I've always been curious about why was she allowed to buy a gun if she'd just come out of the hospital or mental health facility. What don't they do a background? So I went there. Um, I looked at the gun case. I looked at the exact gun that Micah bought. It's a very nice gun. If you know, and I'm not like a particular gun person, but if I was going to buy a gun, that would be the one that I would buy. I talked to the guy about it, about the Glock. I talked to him about the background check. I tried to get the papers, but he wouldn't release it to me. He said he needed to fill it out right then and there and put the type of gun that I wanted in it to run the background. So I'm going to go back and do that. I'm just, I never have understood that part of the story either. There's so many mysteries. That's one part I don't understand. But she was able to purchase it, and it didn't take very long. I've also wondered, did she like have a pre-arrangement? Had she gone there prior? But they told me that they needed to fill it out right then and there. So I don't know. Then again, she had bought many other had apparently may have bought other weapons that he actually confiscated. JP. So I don't know what happened with that, but we see her leave and we see her at the pawn shop, and that's basically where the timeline starts, and the mysteries stack up. She went from, let's see, I'm seeing if I have that. I have I have it kind of little timeline drawn out here. Okay, so we see her at Dick's. Meanwhile, apparently, John Paul, his child, and another person who we think and has been identified by a lot of people as Susie Skinner were at a athletic event in Charlotte. People have said that he went out of his way to make sure he was seen, like really went out of his way to draw attention to himself, to, like I said, make sure he was seen there, presenting, what turned out later to be an alibi. He went apparently to the Olive Garden and bought everybody food, which doesn't sound like him because he seems like a miser, but apparently he did that. Why we didn't see any kind of film from Olive Garden, I don't know. Why we didn't even see a receipt, I don't know. Have y'all seen anything like that? I don't think so. Was that ever released? Maybe not. That would have answered a lot of things if that was something that was documented, right? And should have been. Another mystery. Okay, so then we see her. We see him just one little shot in the car. That's all we saw him. His truck, which we learned later was a truck. It was like Joseph's coat of many colors. His coat, his truck went through major transformations at will. Little pieces being added, pieces being taken off, wheel covers being added, wheel covers taken off. I don't know. And like I said, he owns a whole bunch of other vehicles too. So that dude. All right, so then we see her then driving to the grocery store, not grocery store, but 31 Grocery, the convenience store. And then there was a lot about that. There was a lot of angles. There was even some people who said possibly AI was involved in that, because it looks like there's a couple places that look like that may have been edited. You also see different angles. I remember seeing Grizzlies, for example, um, coverage of the grocery store, and it got a little crazy because um, we see Micah pull up and go in. Um, I believe she got an energy drink. I think she had a sandwich with her. We see her get gas. I believe it. And then go to the porta potty. We see a car in front of the porta potty with its doors open. We can't really see the porta potty much, but some people speculated that the door wasn't quite shut. Maybe she met somebody there. I don't know. It's just some idea somebody threw out trying to make sense. I never did hear anything much being discussed about the car with the doors open. We see a dude on a bicycle right across the street. We see him later come back. We see um, the apparent son of the owner come in, and he just pulls up. He gets something out of the the truck. He goes in. He has like a bag. It was kind of a weird. Then you see him go into the office in the back. But before he went in, he threw the bag by the coffee machine outside the office. Then he comes back, and you see him again on the outside with a bag. Is it the same bag? What happened? That kind of made my street smarts go off on that and speculation of what kind of deal happened there. I don't know, but something happened with that. And anyway, he went out and went back to his truck. And then you see him get into, there was like a little, I don't know, excavator, whatever, front end loader. I don't know what it was. A little machine. And he gets in that. There was no key. He just moved it around a little bit in the parking lot. It was weird. But then you see Micah. Okay, so we see Micah at the gas, getting gas. And we actually see vehicles passing back and forth. And one seemed to catch her attention. I don't know. She might have just looked up. We saw what it looked or appeared to be possibly John Paul, or a truck that looked like his gray color truck. We see, I believe, a white Mercedes Benz there. We see her. It looked like she went to leave, but there was a few. It looked like she sat in front by the fence on the left for a few minutes before she came out. Why? I don't know. Was she trying to figure out where she was? I don't know. Had somebody got in the vehicle at some point? I don't know. There's speculation when we see uh, a road cam, a traffic cam, whatever you might want to call it, picture of her in her car, and it does kind of look like a pointy-eared person is behind her. I don't know. We know a pointy-eared person there, don't we, guys? Anyway, so all that's just mysteries and things that were included in other people's reports that I had seen at that time. Next thing you know, she's at the park. And by next thing you know, I mean 35 minutes later, whatever it takes her to drive to this really dismal place, a place out of the way, a place she has, by all accounts, no connection with. Her family never heard her mention it, or doesn't think she ever was there. They never were there. John Paul apparently doesn't know the whole state of North Carolina, even though he was raised there for a while. So he didn't know anything about it either. He came up with the story, said, yeah, 2 years ago, she told so-and-so that if she was ever going to do this final act, that's where she'd do it. So that sounded to me like a big lie anyway. But so who was lying, him or her or both of them? I don't know. It's a mystery. Again, a mystery why she was there. I did a whole report, a lot of videos on the Lumber River, myths, legends, and calculations. How she got to the place she was in the Lumber River. Big mysteries go up. Lots of speculations. I feel she was lured there. possibly murdered it at a certain point and ended up in the river under a log, even though the river's still carried, a couple 100 feet away from where her belongings were on the shore. Obscure little path. How did some guy in a kayak or a little small boat, as he put it, see it? I don't know. But apparently it seemed like he knew where to look. Johnny Jacobs is not with us. He's the next witness on the scene and the possibly only witness. He died in a tragic car accident 2 weeks ago. He can't speak for himself. I have a lot of notes. I've done a lot of videos on him and my thoughts and comments. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because that again, that Johnny Jacob account is in itself a whole story, and because he's not here to defend himself or to add anything to it I'm just going to let it go and say rest in peace. And I hope that his family's comforted and by the Holy Spirit. That's all I can say about that. This case has had many deaths, whether it was coincidental or spiritual or actually physically connected to the John Paul Miller case. I think we're at a literal, I had to say, body count of 5. But, that's about where we're at one way or another. And when you see the fruit, you can make a good discernment of what's going on. And what we've seen is so much confusion, chaos, and death associated with this case. We know that it has diabolic roots. So may those roots be smashed and cut with the sword of the Spirit. May accountability be held to those responsible for Mica's untimely death as well as the others, if there's any connection. And I pray for justice for Mica, and I pray for peace to her family, friends, and warriors. I love you guys. Thank you for joining me. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much.